Hello and welcome to my shop. My name's Earl and this is Earl's Small Segment Shop. Today I want to make a short video, real short, on basic segments. Now this is about the third try I've started this. And at the same time I want to answer two questions that I keep getting from people. The first one is, why is the angles on open segments different from the angles on closed segments? And the other question is, I send out cheat sheets for all the angles and cut lengths, and people tell me, well, I worked out the dimensions, diameter times pi, and then divide it by number of segments, and it don't come out the same as the cheat sheet. Well, there's a reason for that. I'll get to that here in a minute. But first, let's talk about basic segments. And if you want to know how to glue segments into rings, I got a separate video on 2 ways to glue segments into segmented rings. If you want to know how to glue rings into turnings, I've got a video on that. Fact is, I've got a video on just about everything. I got a video on cutting segments. So pretty much I just want to touch now just the basic what segments are. Okay, now on basic segments. I suppose if you glue 2 or more pieces of wood together and turn them, you could call it a segment turning. But what I want to talk about is gluing pieces of wood into rings, but it's classic segments. Now this is an exaggerated segment. Of course, I didn't cut this to actually glue it up. I cut this as a demo. This would be a segment for 16 segments per ring, the diameter of 11.5 inches. And on a segment, this is called the width. This is the cut angle, one on each side. In this case, 16 segments, the cut angle is 11.25 degrees. The width, of course, depends on the turning. And this is what's called the cut length of the segment. The cut length, of course, depends on the number of segments and the diameter of the ring. Now, on open segments, most times are done at 70%. Now, you can do them at any other percentage you want, 80%, 90%, 85%. Of course, you can't go below 50%. Now, this is an 80% open segment for the same diameter and same number of segments per ring as this one here. So this is for 16 segments per ring at 11.5 inches. It's a 70%. And you'll notice that it is 70% the size of the closed segment, which is why it's called 70%. In this case, the width is the same. The cut angles are different, and I'll talk about that later. And the length, of course, is different. It's 70%. So that's why they're called 70%. Now, how do you know what width to cut the segment? Well, that's a good question. And the width really depends on the turning. If you've got 6, 8, 12 segments per ring, you need to take into consideration the curvature through the segment. This is drawn out here. This is actually a segment size for 8 segments per ring. And you can see the curve through it takes up some distance. This is for 16 segments. You can see the curve don't take up much. Once you get above 16, I don't even worry about it. Don't worry about the curve through it. But here is a ring I made a long time ago. I don't know why I made it anymore, but it's 12 segments. And you can see that there's going to be a definite curve through them. Like I said, I don't know why I made this. I don't normally do 12 segments or 8 segments. Only for special reasons would I do it. But like I said, I did this years ago, so I don't know. Then the other thing is, I drew this out, is the angle of the turning going through the segments. This is a drawing of a small turning. Now if I put a segment here that's 1 inch tall, I'm going to have to make it about 1.25 inches, a little over, to get this angle through it. Whereas if I make 1 inch tall here, where it's going fairly straight, it only got to be about 1/2 inch wide. Of course, I think this drawing here a little bit thicker than 1/4 inch, I'm not sure. Well, on the other hand, if I make them 1/2 inch tall rings, they don't need to be quite as long. But again, I just drew them in so you could see just how big they need to be. And that's how I do my turnings normally. That's how I figure out my length. I just make a little drawing and then measure what I need. Now, they do have computer programs that do all this for you. I tried some and they're just not for me. I find it just quick and easy just to draw them out and see what I need. You can see me do this in many of my other videos. But they're there if you want to use them. I mean, they're available and they work. So, I guess we talk now about the 2 questions I was asked. Now maybe you can see it better here. This is 12 segments glued into a ring. And this, of course, is not a circle. This is a 12-sided figure. So this ring is just about 9.5 inches. If you work out the diameter times pi, you come up with about 2.48, about 2.5 inches. This is actually going to be 9.5 by 12, going to be 2.5455 inches, which is not a terrible big difference, but it's a difference. And the reason being, of course, is it's a straight line across here, not a curve from here to here. And you got these corners that's got to be cut off. So there is a difference. Like I said, it's a 12-sided figure, not a circle. So don't figure it as a circle. I hope that explains that. And now, the angle on the open segments. This is a ring here. It's got 16 segments. I believe it's 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 16 segments. This is closed 16 segments. This is open 16 segments, 70%. And the thing is, all the sides have got to point towards the center. So if I lay a ruler across here, it should be straight from one side to the other, more or less. The angle can be off. That's a nice thing about open segments. The angles can be off just a little bit. Nobody will ever know. Of course, if they're off a lot, you will. But again, the sides should point to the center. That way they look right when you turn them. So, I hope that explains the angles. Okay, let me finish up this little video here. We talked about the open segment angles and how they're supposed to point at the center. Naturally being 70%, the angle's got to be less. And then we talked about closed segments. You're not gluing them into a circle, you're gluing them into a figure, 4-sided figure, 8-sided figure, 12-sided figure, whatever, and then turning that figure into a circle. We talked about basic segments, the width, the cut angle, the length, and figuring the width. That's what people have a hard time figuring, is the width. And the way you cut segments now, I've got a video on cutting segments. Actually, I got a video too on the sled I used to cut them. The way you cut segments normally depends on, well, first of all, the kind of equipment you got. If you don't have a table saw, obviously you don't use a table saw to cut segments. You can use a miter saw. Of course, you can use a table saw. I think the table saw is the best way to cut them, in my opinion. And there's many ways to do it. Of course, the more accurate you cut them, the easier it is later to glue them up. Now I got, like I said, a video just on how to glue up the basic segmented ring. There's two ways, the half ring method and then the closed ring method. I use the single glue up method myself. I like it best, but again, that's whatever you prefer. And also, it depends on how much. If you only make a couple of segments per year, the rest of the time you do green wood or whatever, then you don't need permanent equipment. You can just cut them once in a while. Like I said, it depends on what you're doing and what equipment you got. And of course, in segmenting, you want tight joints. That is the whole idea, is to get tight joints. I've seen so many segments, turnings, that people have made, beautiful turnings, nice wood, nice design, nice patterns, beautiful finish, and ruined because of the joint. There's a bad joint here or there. And just like, and of course the more segments you get, the more critical the angles are to glue them up like this. This is 24 segments with 24 spacers in it. And again, it's got tight joints, but you got to be careful when you make them. You got to watch what you're doing. But you do need to get tight joints. And when you first make segments, I know a lot of people when they first make a segment turning, they want to make 6 or 8 segments. I suggest doing 16. 16, again, like I said, you don't have to worry about the curvature through them so much. Anything over 16, you don't have to worry at all. Plus, you can get a lot better patterns. Plus, if you're going to do segments, start with 16, learn to get them tight, and then it'll be easier later on. At least, that's my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to quit talking now, and thank you for watching the video, and I really appreciate the people that subscribe. That really helps me know how many people's watching. And please come back and watch my next video. Thank you.